I showed her spreadsheets proving we couldn't afford our lifestyle. She ignored them, spent anyway, then acted shocked when reality hit us both.
Hey there, I'm Sophia. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. Walking into Harrison's office, thinking I was getting called in for some budget review or whatever, and then he's telling me I got the promotion. Senior staff writer. Just like that. I mean, I knew I deserved it. I'd been busting my ass for 3 years, covering every shit assignment they threw at me, staying late when everyone else bolted at 5. But hearing it, actually hearing those words, my chest just exploded with this rush of vindication. I called David immediately. He was happy for me, of course, but in that measured way he does everything. You know how some people celebrate. David processes. He asked about the salary bump, 20% increase. Thank you very much, and started doing mental math about our budget. Classic David. Meanwhile, I'm practically floating down the hallway, fielding congratulations from colleagues who suddenly saw me differently. Not just Sophia who writes decent copy anymore. Sophia with the corner desk and the real assignments. That weekend, we drove through Maplewood Heights. Just browsing, I told him, but honestly, I had my eye on that colonial with the wraparound porch. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, updated kitchen with granite countertops. The works. David kept pointing out the mortgage calculator on his phone, but I was already picturing dinner parties in that dining room. My parents visiting, and finally seeing that their daughter had made something of herself. The thing is, when you're moving up, you can't think small. That cramped 2-bedroom we were renting? Fine for starting out, but now I had a reputation to maintain. Clients would expect a certain level of sophistication. Sources judge you by how you present yourself. It's just how the industry works. David didn't get that part. He saw the mortgage payment and freaked out about the number. I saw an investment in our future. So we bought it. 3 weeks of back and forth. David running scenarios and stress testing our budget, me reminding him that careers don't wait for perfect timing. You strike when opportunity presents itself. The house was gorgeous. Hardwood floors, vaulted ceilings, this incredible master suite with a walk-in closet bigger than our old bedroom. Worth every penny. Then came the car situation. My Honda was 8 years old and starting to make that grinding noise whenever I braked. Not exactly the image I wanted to project rolling up to interview city council members or meeting editors for lunch. The BMW dealership had this gorgeous 3 Series, certified pre-owned, charcoal gray with leather interior. Professional but not flashy. David argued we should fix the Honda, but come on. You don't show up to important meetings in a car held together by hope and duct tape. I financed it under my name since my credit was pristine, and the rate was better anyway. David wasn't thrilled, but he couldn't argue with the logic. My job, my professional needs, my responsibility. Clean and simple. Look, I wasn't being reckless. I was being strategic. New position meant new wardrobe. You can't wear Target blazers to editorial meetings. Travel for stories, networking dinners, industry events. These weren't luxuries, they were business expenses. Investments that would pay dividends down the line. David would get these looks sometimes when I'd come home with shopping bags or show him restaurant receipts. Like I was being frivolous instead of building our brand. Our life. I mean, what's the point of success if you don't enjoy it? If you don't position yourself for even greater success? I remember this one night, maybe 2 months after the promotion, David was hunched over his laptop with some spreadsheet, muttering about debt-to-income ratios. I told him he was thinking too small, that successful people take calculated risks. He looked at me like I'd suggested we blow our savings in Vegas. But here's what he didn't understand. Confidence attracts opportunity. Looking successful makes you successful. The promotion wasn't the ceiling, it was the foundation. With my new visibility at the paper, my growing network, the quality assignments I was landing, this was just the beginning. We were finally becoming the kind of couple I'd always envisioned. The kind who belonged in that house, driving that car, living that life. David would catch up eventually. He always did. Once he saw how the investments paid off, how the lifestyle opened doors, he'd realize I'd been right all along. Success requires vision, not spreadsheets.
Hey, this is David. Fucking marketing. Should have seen it coming, honestly. The whole industry's been twitchy for months, budgets getting slashed, clients pulling campaigns left and right. But you never think it's going to be you until Henderson calls you into his office on a Tuesday morning and starts with that corporate sympathy voice. Your position's being eliminated. Budget restructuring. Nothing personal. Standard severance package. Clean out your desk by Friday. 27 years old when I started there. Worked my way up from junior account coordinator to managing decent-sized campaigns. Not glamorous work, but steady. Reliable. Gone in 15 minutes of corporate doublespeak. The drive home was brutal. Sophia's at work, probably in some editorial meeting, riding high on her promotion success. And I'm unemployed. Just like that. Had to sit in the driveway for 10 minutes, staring at our house, our massive fucking mortgage, trying to figure out how to break the news. She took it better than expected, initially, hugged me, said she was sorry, asked about severance and unemployment benefits. Started talking about how this might be an opportunity to find something better, maybe pivot industries. Classic Sophia optimism. But I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Mental math on what my unemployment check would cover versus what we owed every month. That night, I pulled up our finances. Real numbers, not the vague budget conversations we'd been having. Holy shit. Between the mortgage, her car payment, credit cards, utilities, groceries, we were spending almost every dollar of our combined income. My unemployment would cover maybe 60% of my salary. For 6 months, if I was lucky. I showed her the spreadsheet the next evening. Line items, projections, scenarios. We needed to cut back immediately. Cancel the premium cable package. Stop eating out 3 times a week. Maybe refinance the car for a lower payment. Basic stuff. Sophia barely glanced at it. Told me not to panic, that she had the promotion and could pick up extra freelance work. Said I was catastrophizing. But I'm looking at these numbers, man, and catastrophe was exactly what we were heading toward. 2 weeks in, I'm hitting the job boards hard, sending out resumes, networking with old contacts. Meanwhile, Sophie is still buying lunch instead of packing it. Still shopping for work clothes because her new position requires her to look professional. Still booking dinner reservations because she needs to maintain relationships with sources. I tried talking to her about it. Not nagging, just pointing out that every $100 mattered now. She got defensive, said I was micromanaging her spending, that her job required certain expenses. Fair enough. But when I suggested we talk to the bank about temporarily reducing the mortgage payment, or maybe looking at smaller places, she shut that down immediately. This house represents our success, she said. We're not going backward. Backward. Like being practical was admitting defeat. Month 2. I'm taking whatever contract work I can find. Marketing, consultant, gigs, freelance copywriting, anything that pays. Not great money, but better than sitting around. Sophia starts making comments about how I need to be more aggressive in my job search. Network harder, aim higher. Like I'm not busting my ass already. The worst part was feeling like I'd become a problem. Like my unemployment was this personal failing that reflected on both of us. Sophia never said it directly, but I caught the looks when bills came in. The way she'd sigh when I mentioned another job rejection. The subtle shift in how she talked about we versus I when discussing our finances. I started tracking every expense. Not to be controlling, but to have facts. Numbers don't lie. Sophia was spending more per month on clothes and restaurant meals than we were saving on my reduced income. When I showed her, she accused me of keeping score, of making her feel guilty for doing her job. But here's the thing. I'd been cautious about the house from day one. The mortgage payment, the property taxes, the maintenance costs on a place that size. I'd run the numbers then, too, shown her how tight it would be even with both our salaries. She'd push for it anyway, convinced we were being too conservative. Now we're 3 months in, my severance is almost gone, and I'm starting to realize that maybe conservative wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe having breathing room in your budget isn't small-minded thinking. Maybe it's just smart, but Sophie is not interested in maybe. She's interested in maintaining the lifestyle she believes we've earned, even when we can't afford it anymore.
3 months. 3 fucking months after David lost his job, and then it happened to me. I was in the middle of editing a piece on municipal budget allocations. God, the irony, when Harrison called me into his office again. Same office where I'd gotten the promotion 6 months earlier, same chair, same fake plants in the corner. Budget cuts. Across-the-board reductions. Last hired, first fired. I just sat there staring at him, waiting for the punchline. This had to be some kind of mistake. I was the senior staff writer. I had the corner desk. I'd been killing it on every assignment. Sources loved me. My articles were getting picked up by other outlets. How do you eliminate a position that's clearly adding value? But newspapers don't give a shit about logic when advertising revenue drops 30% in 6 months. Digital media's eating everyone alive. Print subscriptions are hemorrhaging, and suddenly my promotion salary looked like a luxury they couldn't afford. The drive home was surreal. I kept thinking about David's spreadsheets, all those numbers I'd dismissed as pessimistic overthinking. Turns out pessimistic was just realistic. We weren't prepared for one of us being unemployed. We definitely weren't prepared for both. David took the news quietly. Too quietly. I could see him processing, calculating, probably updating his fucking spreadsheet with new disaster scenarios. He asked about my severance package. Minimal, since I'd only been in the senior position for 6 months. Asked about COBRA coverage, unemployment benefits, whether I had freelance contacts lined up. Practical questions. Important questions. Questions that made me want to scream because they highlighted exactly how fucked we were. That night, lying in our king-size bed in our beautiful house that we absolutely could not afford anymore, the panic really hit. My BMW payment was $430 a month. My credit cards, the ones I'd used for work clothes and networking dinners and travel expenses, were sitting at about $18,000 total. The house payment was $2,800, plus property taxes, plus utilities, plus maintenance. I'd built this life around my promotion income. This identity around being successful, professional, somebody who belonged in nice places wearing nice things. And now what? Back to unemployment checks and generic groceries and feeling like a fraud every time I drove anywhere? David started job hunting immediately, widening his search beyond marketing. He was willing to take whatever paid decent money. Operations roles, project management, even some blue-collar stuff if it came with benefits. I admired that about him, honestly. His ability to swallow his pride and focus on solutions. But I couldn't let go that easily. This wasn't just about money. It was about everything I'd worked toward. The respect, the recognition, the sense that I'd finally made something of myself. Going backward felt like admitting I'd never deserved the promotion in the first place. So when David suggested we downsize the house, I lost it. Told him we bought it as an investment, that selling in this market would be financial suicide. When he mentioned maybe trading in my car for something cheaper, I reminded him it was in my name, my responsibility, and we'd take a massive hit on depreciation. The fights got worse. David would come home from interviews for jobs that paid half what he used to make, looking defeated, and I'd snap at him about not aiming high enough. He'd show me job postings for administrative roles or freelance writing gigs, and I'd explain why they weren't suitable for someone with my experience and credentials. But here's what I wasn't saying, what I couldn't admit even to myself. I was terrified. Terrified that this was who I really was. That the promotion, the success, the confidence had all been temporary. That I was just another unemployed journalist in a dying industry, drowning in debt from trying to play a role I wasn't qualified for. David didn't understand the pressure. Men can reinvent themselves professionally, start over, take anything that pays the bills. Women in journalism, especially at 30, don't get second chances. We get judged for every gap in our resume, every step backward, every compromise we make. So I held on. To the house, to the car, to the credit card balances that represented my attempts to build something meaningful. Even when holding on was destroying us both. The morning David told me he'd found work at a construction company, driving a delivery truck for $15 an hour, I felt this mixture of relief and resentment that made me sick. Relief because we'd have some income. Resentment because he'd given up fighting for something better. I accused him of settling, of not supporting our shared vision anymore. He looked at me like I was completely delusional and said we didn't have a shared vision. We had my vision and his willingness to bankrupt himself trying to make it work. That's when I realized he wasn't going to save me anymore. Wasn't going to enable my refusal to face reality. And somehow, that made me angrier than losing the job had.
6 months of this shit. 6 months of working construction and delivery jobs, coming home exhausted, and listening to Sophia blame me for not solving our financial crisis fast enough. Like I was supposed to magic up a $60,000 marketing job in an economy where everyone was laying people off. The breaking point came on a Wednesday night in November. I just gotten paid from the trucking job, decent money, actually better than I'd expected, and I was trying to figure out how to allocate it. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, my truck payment. Basic survival stuff. Sophia had maxed out another credit card. $800 at Nordstrom because she needed interview outfits. For interviews, she wasn't getting. She'd applied to maybe 10 places in 4 months, most of them above her previous salary range, and spent more on clothes than she'd made in freelance income. When I told her I wasn't putting my paycheck toward her credit card payments anymore, she exploded. Started screaming about how we were supposed to be a team, how marriage meant supporting each other through tough times. The irony was incredible. Where was that team mentality when I lost my job and she kept spinning like nothing changed? I told her she was right about marriage being a team effort, but teams require both players to be working toward the same goal. She wanted to maintain a lifestyle we couldn't afford. I wanted to survive with our credit intact. She accused me of abandoning her. I told her I was trying to save both of us from bankruptcy. That night, I called my brother Mike. Laid out the whole situation, the house, the debt, Sophia's refusal to downsize, the constant fights about money. Mike listened and then said something that hit me like a punch to the gut. Dude, you're not married to a partner. You're married to someone who thinks you're her personal bailout plan. He was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being Sophia's husband and become her financial safety net. Every decision got filtered through what I could afford to cover, what I could handle, what I could sacrifice to make her vision work. I filed for divorce in December. Not out of anger, exactly, but out of exhaustion. Pure, bone-deep exhaustion from carrying the weight of 2 people's bad decisions while only one of us was willing to face consequences. Sophia was shocked. Like, genuinely shocked. She kept asking how I could give up on us, how I could walk away from our marriage over money problems. But it wasn't about money. It was about fundamental incompatibility in how we approached reality. The legal process was straightforward but brutal. Our lawyer explained how marital debt worked. Jointly held obligations like the mortgage would be split, but individual debt remained individual. Sophia's car loan and credit cards were hers alone. The house would have to be sold. Sophia fought the house sale hard, kept insisting we could rent it out, that the market would recover, that selling now was throwing away equity we didn't have. The judge wasn't interested in her optimistic projections. The house was underwater, we couldn't make payments, and a discussion. Court dates were surreal. Sitting across from someone I'd lived with for 4 years, arguing over asset division and debt responsibility. Sophia's lawyer tried to claim I should cover part of her credit card balances since some of the purchases were for household expenses. My lawyer shut that down with receipts, restaurant meals, clothes, personal travel that I'd explicitly objected to. The final decree was signed in March. House went on the market immediately. Sold 6 weeks later for $30,000 less than we owed. Neither of us got anything from the sale except the relief of not owing payments anymore. I felt hollow watching Sophia sign the papers. Not sad, exactly, but empty, like closing the book on a story that should have had a different ending. She looked smaller somehow, deflated, reality finally sinking in that the divorce was actually happening. We divided our possessions in the garage on a rainy Saturday. Sophia took her interview clothes and kitchen equipment. I took my tools and the TV. Everything else, furniture, decorations, wedding gifts, went to Goodwill or the trash. Amazing how little actually mattered when you stripped away the pretense. My buddy Jake let me crash on his couch for a month while I found a studio apartment. Cheap place, nothing fancy, but clean and quiet. I bought a used pickup truck to replace my lease, set up basic utilities, opened my own checking account for the first time in years. The relief was immediate. No more joint bills I couldn't control. No more fights about spending. No more spreadsheets showing how fucked we were getting every month. Just my income, my expenses, my decisions. Sophia kept the BMW and the credit card debt. Her choice, her consequences. The divorce decree made that crystal clear. She was solely responsible for debts incurred in her name, which are not meant for family benefit. I know that sounds harsh. Maybe it was harsh. But I'd spent 2 years watching someone I loved make increasingly destructive financial decisions and refuse all attempts at course correction. At some point, you have to choose between saving them and saving yourself. I chose myself. Finally.
The BMW got repossessed on a Tuesday morning in April. Right there in the Walmart parking lot, while I was buying generic cereal and marked-down produce. Humiliating doesn't begin to cover it. Having to call an Uber to get home, explaining to the driver why I didn't have a car anymore. $22,000 in credit card debt and no job. The freelance work dried up completely after word spread about the divorce and my employment situation. Professional reputation in shambles. Turns out the journalism world is smaller than you think, and failure has a long memory. David had been right about the house sale. We lost everything we'd put into it, but at least the mortgage was gone. At least one less payment crushing me every month. Small consolation when you're 30 years old and moving back in with roommates like you're fresh out of college. The apartment I found was a shithole. Seriously. Water stains on the ceiling, carpet that probably hadn't been replaced since the 80s, neighbors who played music until 3 a.m. on weeknights. But it was $450 a month including utilities, and beggars can't be choosers. I got a job at Target. Not freelance writing, or communications consulting, or any of the career-adjacent positions I'd convinced myself I was holding out for. Just regular retail work, folding clothes and running register, and getting talked down to by customers who assumed I was there because I couldn't do anything better. They weren't wrong, technically. I couldn't do anything better. My industry was collapsing. My resume had a 6-month gap I couldn't explain without admitting failure, and my credit was so trashed I couldn't even get approved for store financing. The worst part was watching David from a distance. Social media, mutual friends, the occasional sighting around town. He'd gotten hired at some logistics company, not glamorous work, but steady income with benefits. Moved into a decent apartment across town. Bought a used truck that actually ran properly. He looked good, healthier somehow, less stressed. Like he'd shed this weight he'd been carrying for years. Which, I guess, was literally what happened when he divorced me. I wanted to hate him for it. For walking away. For rebuilding. For making it look so easy to start over. But honestly, late at night in my shitty apartment, trying to figure out how to stretch grocery money until the next paycheck, I mostly hated myself. All those fights about him not being ambitious enough, not thinking big enough, not supporting our shared vision. Turns out our shared vision was just my delusion, and his caution was the only thing keeping us from complete disaster. When I pushed him past his comfort zone, I pushed us both off a cliff. The credit card companies started calling in June, threatening legal action, wage garnishment, asset seizure. Joke's on them, I had no assets left to seize. Just debt, and a 10-year-old Honda I'd bought from a coworker's brother for $800 cash. I considered bankruptcy. Talked to a lawyer who explained how it worked, what I'd lose, what I'd keep, how long it would affect my credit. The consultation fee alone was money I didn't have. Meanwhile, David was apparently doing well enough to start dating again. Sarah from accounting saw him at some restaurant in the nice part of town, dressed up, laughing with some blonde woman who looked put together in ways I hadn't felt in months. That hurt more than the repo, more than the job rejections, more than the constant anxiety about money. Seeing evidence that he'd moved on completely while I was still drowning in the consequences of choices we'd made together. Except we hadn't made them together, had we? I'd made them. I'd pushed for the house, insisted on the car, run up the credit cards. He'd warned me, show me spreadsheets, tried to pump the brakes. I dismissed his concerns as small-minded thinking. 7 months after the divorce was final, I was working double shifts at Target, living paycheck to paycheck, and slowly accepting that this might be my life now. Not temporarily. Not while I figured things out. Just permanently. The promotion that started everything felt like it happened to someone else. That confident woman who bought expensive clothes and made dinner reservations and talked about investments in her career, she might as well have been a character in a movie I'd watched once. David had tried to save us both. When that didn't work, he'd saved himself. I'd held on to pride and image and the belief that I deserved better until there was nothing left to hold on to. Now I was learning what better actually looked like. It looked like David's new life, modest, sustainable, built on reality instead of aspiration. It looked like everything I'd been too proud to accept when I still had the choice.